Good evening, everybody. We're just going to have a really quick conversation with my friend Patrick Sampey. Me and him are both pantheists. Not quite sure if it's the same version or we're going to find out, anyways. And we're going to kind of go over maybe a few videos regarding the topic. Pantheism is a very interesting concept in my mind, because it opens up a lot of questions for people. It can also be like a bridge to talking to religious people. Also, it can be a bridge to talking about people that are not so religious, and are naturalists. So we have a lot in common. So it's just a good common point, good common ground to speak and talk. And I love having these kind of conversations. It's just my bag. And which brings me to introducing my friend here, Patrick Sampey, who I've known on Fight on the Fence for a number of years. How's it going, brother?
Going good. Shout out to the Fight on the Fence. That's a great group, by the way. I've always loved our exchanges there and the people there. And I think it's the type of debate group that's not like an echo chamber like you hear in so many other groups. They are welcome to, different perspectives on things. So, I really enjoyed that. So shout out to them real quick.
Absolutely, man. That's the one thing no one can ever say about Fight on the Fence. They are definitely not an echo chamber because everybody's going at it passionately about different topics and concepts and philosophical ideas and stuff like that. But one of the ideals and ideas that very rarely gets discussed, really in any sort of group or in the mainstream, would be the idea of pantheism, because that seems to be, even though it's a very ancient sort of worldview system, it's kind of like a philosophy, spiritual sort of teaching, but not in a Abrahamic religious sense. Like, it's not something that you're looking for some transcendent God to come and bless you personally and smite the Philistines and things like that. It's more
Yeah,
like a.
so I got to
Mhm.
go ahead.
Oh, I
But
go
I
right
was
ahead,
going to
brother.
say it's not like a belief in a personal God, like you said, like you pray for that bike for Christmas. Like Kaku had a video on it about the faith of Einstein, and it's more of a metaphorical God for many. For me, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure if it's a literal God or a metaphorical God. That depends on what we may discover in the future, I believe. So, I think at its onset, pantheists, have a common denominator there where we feel like maybe the universe or the cosmos is God. Essentially, when you Google the definition, it's got two definitions there. The first one equates God with the universe or the natural order of things. It's not a supernatural God like that, but go ahead. You were going to say something.
Oh no, that's very
Oh,
good
I
stuff.
thought you were going to say something
Mhm.
that, suffice it to say, he sums it up that, Einstein had said from the perspective of an Orthodox Jesuit priest, he is and always has been an atheist. So that, for that perspective, but he wasn't actually saying he was an atheist. It's only Einstein ultimately knows what he believed, and we can't question him anymore. So we just got to go by what he said. And he said he believed in the God of Spinoza on numerous occasions. So you know, but let me talk about real quick about how I came to my pantheism. Just in case somebody wasn't aware of that, like
Uh-huh.
You know, I don't think it's like a great leap of faith anyway, but maybe I'll come back to that. But I was taking a shower, like maybe I was 35 years old, something like that, maybe somewhere around that age. And I'm just taking a shower, I'm washing my hair, everything. I'm thinking, man, the universe has been described as infinite, and God has been described by religion as without beginning or end. And I started to feel like there was a connection there. And I was like, I thought I had an epiphany. I still to this day assert that I had an epiphany. And, that was it. And I just started seeing other connections I felt there. But I didn't know about Einstein. I didn't know about Pantheism. I didn't know about Spinoza. None of that.
That was an
Years later,
aha moment. Yeah, you had what you call an aha moment where something really just clicked with you and you got the concept and it's stuck with you ever since.
Yeah, and so, like, then years later, I'm in these debate groups, and I went straight at atheists because I believe atheists are the hardest of hard, so they're going to really scrutinize your beliefs and what your claim is there or something. Had a gnat in my face. But suffice it to say, they really have a hard pushback, and I like that. And I like the pushback against, and they want separation of church and state. I agree with you there. No God in schools. I agree with you there. Matter of fact, let's get God off our currency. Let's take it to another extreme. Don't have license plates with God on them. Separate church and state. I'm with that. So I agree with atheists on so many accounts. And I wanted to get back to you, and I'm glad I have reconnected because we were talking about bridging that gap, and
Right.
And second, to get back to the definition of pantheism, I get off on tangents, but the first definition we've got outlined. Now, the second definition is like a faith or a belief that tolerates any and all faiths. And I think that's really the pantheist includes, from my perspective, the pantheist includes everybody, even atheists, anybody. You're included whether you like it or not. It's like the Borg of Star Trek, okay?
Right.
So you will be assimilated. No, I'm just playing, but seriously, it is kind of like that. Pantheists, I think, should be more open to others' ideas and, take more of an agnostic view to a lot of different faiths, I believe, rather than a hard rejection and disbelief. Now I don't know about talking snakes, woman made of a man's rib, or 7-headed dragon creatures rising up like revelations in the end and bringing forth doom and destruction to us all for our evil ways. I don't really adhere to that. So maybe from certain perspectives, I am a hard atheist, because from that perspective, I'm a Gnostic atheist, straight up.
Yeah. Certain things, we can say are not possible, at least logically. So you can say, if something has a contradiction entailed in its description, then that statement by definition, can't be true. So there's a lot of claims by different interpretations of the Bible that run into all sorts of, if not even contradictions, if you want to be nice and say they're not contradictions, at least tensions, really hard tensions. And that kind of stuff tends to make it complicated. You have to do mental gymnastics to get your mind wrapped around certain concepts. And for me, it just seems to me that if this separated God really cared that people believed in him, he wouldn't make it complicated. You wouldn't have to become a scholar and understand Greek and Hebrew and understand history and how to read books, and ancient books at that. It seems that God would avail himself very blatant, especially if this God is supposed to be some kind of father figure, where a moral father would never abandon his children and become hidden from him. If you love your child, you're going to be in that child's life to the best of your ability, and you're going to try to communicate directly to your child. They shouldn't have to know about you through some paper left on the ground somewhere that they have to read and try to interpret and go to scholars and things like that to figure it out. Like, that's just not for me. And I admit this is all subjective. These are my subjective opinions, but I think we share those sort of objective or subjective opinions about it. I mean, God could be evil. Nothing says that God has to be all good and all
Hey, let's
powerful.
talk about that. Let's talk about that for a minute. Now,
Yeah.
every concept of God, or most depict a benevolent God that also happens to flood everybody and destroy entire cities of everything moving. What did the animals do?
Right.
But suffice it to say, oh no, that's not contradictory at all. No, but seriously, though, it's just, I think it's all guessing at what God is. We're taking a guess. We're taking a shot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think pantheism may be a falsifiable claim. And here's why: we can observe and study the universe. It's not something we can observe with science. So we can observe it. So, if it sounds like it could be a falsifiable claim.
And here's my take on pantheism, by the way. I'm probably what you call a scientific or a naturalistic pantheist. In other words, I think that, the divine or God can be detected by looking at nature itself, because really, time, space, and matter and energy, these things are not really fundamental from what most physicists are now coming to realize. Time and space and everything derivative of time and space, including brains, including, cells, trees, stars, all of this stuff does not really, are not the fundamental reality. They're not real fundamentally. They kind of emerge from a deeper structure, is what different physicists tell us, right? And so, what is that structure? Well, right now, it's just a mathematical structure, right? And it's actually more than one structure. There's even deeper structure than some of the structures they recently discovered through equations and doing the math and stuff like that. The whole point is that reality is really weird, and reality isn't necessarily what we think it should be. Like, we think it should be corresponding to what we see and what we perceive in the world. But who says that but us? We are the ones that say that. All we really know is that we experience a reality. We don't necessarily have to know what the fundamental of reality is. I mean, we just discovered quantum mechanics, for example, which is just very non-intuitive. No way for anybody to really understand that unless you really measure things and use that sort of rigorous, language, to get at it. And so for me, it's just being awestruck by these sort of realities that we can measure, we can talk about scientifically even. And it's more, pantheism for me is more of like a philosophical sort of thing. It's a way of speaking about the greatness and unity of nature, and how this nature is a better explanation for things than the supernatural, because we have a track record. We have such a long track record. Every single mystery that has ever been solved at any point in time has always been solved with a naturalistic explanation. Every one of them. Not one has had a supernatural explanation. Not one. So logic, you talk about logic, then it seems to me that the logical thing to do is expect for that bridge to be filled in with more natural stuff. There's got to be a greater natural reality. It's all natural, right?
I definitely agree with you. We're right on the same page there. I think we diverge at some point, probably, and maybe we'll get into that, hopefully. But, as far as that, I agree 100%, because, like you say, And really and honestly, the natural world is so wild and so, I mean, dynamic and diverse. I don't see why anybody needs anything supernatural. Why would they need that? You know,
Exactly.
it's nothing, like you say, nothing that we've ever evidenced has been determined supernatural. Now, you got these ghost shows and all this stuff, but yeah, I've never seen any evidence of ghosts and stuff like that, so I can't say about that. But that's, you know, that's another topic perhaps, but that goes back to supernatural, I believe. So
And look, and here's the thing too, as we have these discuss and we talk and I talk to different people of different worldviews that may seem very strange and weird from where we're sitting. Our views can seem very strange and weird from where they're sitting. So who really has the right perception or the true perception? My opinion on all of that is to just be agnostic, like you said before. It's just more honest to be agnostic about it and say, at the end of the day, I really don't know what the fundamental thing of reality is. But we do know that space, time, energy, matter, and everything that derives from it is not fundamental. And that kind of opens up something I wanted to bring to your attention because I know before, you know, you've always been interested in consciousness and, you know, where
that's what I'm. That's fundamental. When you were talking about, it's not fundamental.
right. So
I was looking into this. Check this. Pan protopsychism. It's a concept that very few people, I think, are aware. I called into the Atheist Experience, and neither one of the hosts, Matt Dillahunty,
I heard
nor
that. Here's
the
the thing.
female he had on, they weren't even aware of the concept.
But here's what I wanted to bring to your attention, though, Patrick, is that and they're all ingenious ideas like these. There's different panpsychist ideas and models in science. Like I think you had mentioned some of Orr is one of them.
Sir
Yeah,
Roger Penrose. Now I don't know if he's an atheist, agnostic, or what. Don't matter to me, but I believe his OR theory kind of gels with that pan protopsychism, and here's why. Because it deduces in that, if you read that, it says links our consciousness to the space-time geometry of the
of
universe.
the universe. Yeah, but see, here's the problem. Here's
Consciousness is fundamental. In pan protopsychism, consciousness is fundamental to the universe.
right. But here is the twist that I can give you on that. So with OR, consciousness is embedded in space time, in the fabric of space time, right? So, but we know space time is not fundamental, right? So therefore, if consciousness is embedded in matter, then it wouldn't be fundamental either. But there's another way that consciousness can be fundamental, and it's an even a more compelling argument that's made by this guy named Donald Hoffman. Are you familiar with Donald Hoffman?
I'm not. I'll have to check into that.
This is what I want to look at real quick. Um,
Yeah, let's
Donald,
check it out.
yeah, he has a really interesting idea about consciousness and you know, is it fundamental? How is it fundamental, and how could we know? So I'm trying to see which video would probably be the best because a lot of these are very long. But
Got you. I think there are three possibilities with consciousness. That's what OR theory states in the beginning of it. It says one theory is that consciousness arises from a complex organism like a brain, and then like the OR theory deduces that like consciousness, you know, like I said, interacts with the space-time geometry of the universe, which that our consciousness at the quantum level and the microtubules that line our brain cell walls and the cell walls of a single-celled paramecium. They use a paramecium as one example of a conscious thing without a brain or nervous system at all. So to me, that evidence, and that's evidence, of consciousness in a single-celled organism, that blasts that emergent theory that consciousness emerges from a complex thing such as a brain. No, because you have evidence, direct evidence of a single-celled paramecium exhibiting consciousness. Now, I'm not saying it's a sentient being like we are. It's not sentient, but it's conscious. Quite obviously, it reacts to its world and environment around us. It's like, and I've had people tell me, well, that's just automatic reactions. It's like a reflex. It's not really like that. It's not a reflex, like a knee-jerk reaction. They are interacting with their environment.
Well, here's I got this video pulled up with Donald Hoffman. This is part of his interview with Lex Friedman, and he kind of gets into how consciousness. He talks about consciousness and how we're detached from reality and things like that. Hopefully, he'll get into the fundamental question. But here it is. I'm gonna go ahead and share it first. Hold on just a second. There we go.
First of all, just in case people are not familiar with your work, let's sort of linger on the big, bold statement here, which is the thing we see with our eyes is not some kind of limited window into reality. It is completely detached from reality, likely completely detached from reality. You're saying 100% likely. Okay. So none of this is real in the way we think is real, in the way we have this intuition. There's like this table is some kind of abstraction, but underneath it all, there's atoms. And there's an entire century of physics that describes the functioning of those atoms and the quarks that make them up. There's many Nobel Prizes about particles and fields and all that kind of stuff that slowly builds up to something that's perceivable to us, both with our eyes, with our different senses, as this table. Then there's also ideas of chemistry that over layers of abstraction, from DNA to embryos, the cells that make the human body. So all of that is not.
It's a real experience, and it's a real adaptive set of perceptions. So it's an adaptive set of perceptions, full stop. We want to think that
perceptions are real.
So their perceptions are real as perceptions, right? They are. We are having our perceptions, but we've assumed that there's a pretty tight relationship between our perceptions and reality. If I look up and see the moon, then there is something that exists in space and time that matches what I perceive. And all I'm saying is that if you take evolution by natural selection seriously, then that is precluded. That our perceptions are there. They're there to guide adaptive behavior, full stop. They're not there to show you the truth. In fact, the way I think about it is they're there to hide the truth because the truth is too complicated. It's just like if you're trying to, use your laptop to write an email, right? What you're doing is toggling voltages in the computer. But good luck trying to do it that way. That's the reason why we have a user interface is because we don't want to know that quote unquote truth, the diodes and resistors and all that terrible hardware. If you had to know all that truth, it would, your friends wouldn't hear from you. So what evolution gave us was perceptions that guide adaptive behavior. And part of that process, it turns out, means hiding the truth and giving you eye candy.
So
Donald Hoffman in this video was mainly talking about how evolutionary game theory um, favors organisms that don't really know the true state of anything, the true state of reality as it really is. But instead, it's those who are good at constructing things in such a way that they can survive. Those are the ones who kind of went out and procreate, and their species tends to survive. So he's making the evolutionary argument for the idea that we don't really see reality for what it is at all, 100%. Anyways, I'll keep on with the video.
What's the difference between hiding the truth and forming abstractions, layers upon layers of abstractions over low level voltages and transistors and chips and programming languages from assembly to Python that then leads you to be able to have an interface like Chrome where you open up another set of JavaScript and HTML programming languages that lead you to have a graphical user interface on which you can then send your friends an email. Is that completely detached from the zeros and ones that are firing away inside the computer?
It's not. Of course, when I talk about the user interface on your desktop, there's this whole sophisticated backstory to it, right? That the hardware and the software that's allowing that to happen. Evolution doesn't tell us the backstory, right? So the theory of evolution is not going to be adequate to tell you what is that backstory. It's going to say that whatever reality is, and that's the interesting thing, it says whatever reality is, you don't see it. You see a user interface, but it doesn't tell you what that user interface is, how it's built. Right now, we can try to look at certain aspects of the interface, but already we're going to look at that and go, okay, before I would look at neurons and I was assuming that I was seeing something that was at least partially true. And now I'm realizing it could be like looking at the pixels on my desktop or icons on my desktop, and good luck, going from that to the data structures and then the voltages. And good luck. There's just no way. So what's interesting about this is that our scientific theories are precise enough and rigorous enough to tell us certain limits, and even limits of the theories themselves. But they're not going to tell us what the next move is. And that's where scientific creativity comes in. So the stuff that I'm saying here, for example, is not alien to physicists. The physicists are saying precisely the same thing, that space-time is doomed. We've assumed that space-time is fundamental. We've assumed that for several centuries, and it's been very useful. So all the things that you were mentioning, the particles and all the work that's been done, that's all been done in space-time. But now physicists are saying space-time is doomed. There's no such thing as space-time fundamentally in the laws of physics. And that comes actually out of gravity together with quantum field theory. It just comes right out of it. It's a theorem of those two theories put together. But it doesn't tell you what's behind it. So the physicists know that their best theories, Einstein's gravity and quantum field theory put together, entail that space-time cannot be fundamental, and therefore particles in space-time cannot be fundamental. They're just irreducible representations of the symmetries of space-time. That's what they are.
Yeah, so you get that space-time is not fundamental, according to theoretical physicists. That seems to be the more popular view these days in physics, is that space-time is emergent. And you've got theories and models like loop quantum gravity, and different ones, multiverse theories, string theories, things like that. So physicists are aware of that. So it's not talking out of his ass.
So space-time. So we put the two together. We put together what the physicists are discovering, and we can talk about how they do that. And then the new discoveries from evolution of natural selection. Both of these discoveries are really in the last 20 years. And what both are saying is space-time has had a good ride. It's been very useful. Reductionism has been useful, but it's over. And it's time for us to go beyond.
When you say space-time is doomed, is it the space? Is it the time? Is it the very hard-coded specification of 4 dimensions? or are you specifically referring to the kind of perceptual domain that humans operate in, which is space-time? You think like there's a 3D, like our world is three-dimensional and time progresses forward, therefore 3 dimensions plus 1, 4D. What exactly do you mean by space-time? What do you mean by space-time is doomed?
Great. So this is, by the way, not my quote. This is from, for example, Nima Arkani Hamed at the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton, Ed Witten, also there, David Gross, Nobel Prize winner. So this is not just something the cognitive scientists, this is what the physicists are saying.
Yeah, the physicists are space-time skeptics.
Yeah, they're saying that, and I can say exactly why they think it's doomed, but what they're saying is that, because your question was, what aspect of space-time, what are we talking about here? It's both space and time.
Hold up. Can we pause this for a second?
Say that again.
I was just saying if we could pause this for a second.
Oh yeah, sure. Yep.
Are they now, this guy's debating Einstein? I have a problem with that.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
As long as he's not doing that, he
No. What he's saying, Patrick, is that space-time within that framework of the universe works as a perfect theory. Einstein's theory of relativity.
It's been evident last year.
Yeah, there's so much evidence. That's why we can get rockets to Mars.
It froze. You froze there. Am I still on here going? Well, everyone, he froze for a second. Let's see if he comes back.
Okay, let's see if I'm back on.
Give me just a sec.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Give me just a sec. I'll be right back.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but so I think the way that Donald Hoffman is describing his views is that Newtonian physics works great for what it does. Relativity works great for what it does. All of these different areas, like Einstein's relativity, all works in the big things. Quantum mechanics works perfectly when talking about the smaller things. Well, not perfectly, but you know what I mean. Really good. We're really good at modeling and predicting things within those sort of domains of reality, if you will. But all he's saying is that it even goes deeper than that. There's something even deeper.
Well, that's his hypothesis. It sounds like.
Well, that's the consensus right
not
now.
A fact. The consensus of the populist scientists are not necessarily throughout history. They've been wrong. They didn't like Einstein's theory of general relativity to begin with either. I don't think. And
all I'm really saying with this, by showing you this video, is to let you see that there's a lot of scientists, people who know their shit more than us, that know all about the science.
They know it more than Einstein.
Well, they're not disagreeing with Einstein. That's what I'm telling you. They're what they're looking at are things that go deeper than Einstein could have ever known.
Like,
that's
his theory, but I think Kaku is wrong. I got a lot of respect. Love Kaku, But I think string theory is just dead wrong because it debates Einstein. And once you go into a debate with Einstein, like I said, I have a problem with that. Because
this is the
every
thing.
time somebody tries to prove Einstein's wrong, you know what happens, right?
Well, Einstein is not a god. Einstein is a very, very ingenious, creative mind. That's what he was. Anybody can be wrong about anything, but I don't even think that they're trying. I don't think that. No. I don't even think that most of these scientists are saying Einstein was wrong. I think sometimes they can challenge Einstein, certain theories, certain, Einstein says, hey, if relativity is true, then your GPS is going to always be off, and then you need some kind of correction because of gravity and time dilation. And so they put that stuff up there, and sure enough, we have GPS that we have to correct because of time dilation. It's a real thing. So that's why we have GPS, and we're able to do so many things in science right now. And same with quantum theory. That's why we have chips in our computers and phones and everything like that. We have quantum computers now, so they're proof of concept. That entanglement, superposition can be. You can process qubits in a superposition, which makes the processing time almost infinite. You would think. But anyways, all of that's due to Einstein.
Was he a computer scientist? This guy that we had the video.
No, he was. Donald Hoffman is a neuroscientist, and
sounds like he knew a little bit about computers and computer science.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he worked in AI. Yeah, he worked in AI research and stuff like that. So he has to have a real strong computer background for that.
Yeah, I've had that AC, DC theory, transistor theory, all that, PNP, all that. I coded assembler, COBOL, CICS, Visual Basic, C++. I've known the software side. Now, I hadn't done that in a long time, but I studied that in electronics theory, Fermat's last theorem, or just all kinds of stuff is involved in electronics, troubleshooting electronic components.
Well, the other thing, exactly. Now, the other thing I wanted to do was go over this video about pantheism, like to kind of just define the different ways people talk about it, and let you check that out. That's going to be interesting. So check this out.
What is pantheism? The term pantheism comes from the two Greek words, pan, which means all, of everything, and theos, which means God, or divine. Pantheism, therefore, literally means, all is God, or all is divine, or everything is God. Formally defined, pantheism is a view of reality that tends to identify the world with God, or God with the world. It is important to note that pantheism is not so much a doctrine, as it is the implication of views expressed in terms of the world, God, the absolute, or infinity. It generally emphasizes the immanence of God in the world and de-emphasizes, or ignores, his transcendence over the world. However, since no one has as yet failed to make some distinction between transcendent and immanent aspects of infinite being, there never has been a complete and utter pantheism. It is also important to note that the scholastics tend to reduce pantheism to a form of atheism on the ground that identification of God with the world implies the denial of him as transcendent and really distinct from the world, a view fundamental to all forms of theism. However, the majority of those who are labeled pantheists manifest a strong religious commitment to God in one way or another. In fact, many of them are properly classified as religious thinkers. Again, views of reality termed pantheistic usually embody some limitation that effectively negates complete identification between God and the world. One such limitation now identifies itself as panentheism and claims many earlier thinkers as proponents. Beyond this, a more general element of restriction is found in monism, which distinguishes between absolute and finite being, but reduces one to an illusion or appearance of the other. Interpretations of such reductions, of course, differ widely. Origins in the East. Throughout ancient Indian philosophy, with its direction toward self, themes occur that are clearly pantheistic. The general current of Vedic literature conveys the notion of a purely immanent deity, Purusa, frequently described as the whole of reality. In the Upanishads, the notions of Brahman and Atman are proposed as manifestations of the Absolute, Brahma being the objective evolutionary manifestation, and Atman the conscious, or subjective manifestation. In idealistic interpretations of Upanishadic literature, the world is appearance or illusion. In materialistic interpretations, the world is the reality, deity is impersonal, mythical, a manifestation of the world.
Yes, I had to pause it so I don't get cut off. But yeah, so there's different views already. You can see like some of the background. We haven't even got into the Platonic in the Greek forms of pantheism, in the pagan
I
forms.
disagree with that part of the video where it said that pantheists take on like a religious world.
Yeah, right.
view.
I didn't like that either. Yeah,
But,
I don't think I agree with that either, because religious thinking to me seems to convey this idea that you're in lockstep with a group with regard to the topic of God and his teachings. Like it's a
there
very
is no pantheist religion that I'm aware of. Even there's no churches, there's no following, there's no leaders.
No.
Yeah, there's nothing like that I've noticed.
Not at all, man. But anyways, I'm gonna keep on with the video.
I got you.
In ancient Chinese thought, Taoism, especially in doctrines of Lao Tzu, reflects a certain pantheism, in that the Tao is said to have produced all things out of itself. Greek and Roman thought. Among the ancient Greeks, Xenophanes denounced the polytheism of his day, but made God the totality of being. Parmenides extended this pantheism to an extreme monism expressed in terms of being and paralleling some of the ancient Hindu notions of the absolute. This doctrine of Parmenides was developed by Melissus to include the notion of infinity. For these monists, changing reality was an illusion, much as it was for the idealistic interpreters of the Upanishads. On the other hand, Heraclitus offered a monism in which permanence was the illusion and change the only reality. He called his primal fire Zeus, Logos, or deity, and developed a doctrine similar to the almost contemporary Buddhist theory of momentariness. Both Platonism and Neoplatonism evidence tendencies toward pantheism that derive from foundations in Plato's thought. The relation between the doctrine of the One and that of ideas suggests a similarity to the Hindu doctrine of Maya, where the only reality is God and everything else is merely an appearance. Centuries later, Plotinus reinforced this Platonic implication of pantheism with his own doctrine of emanationism, which gave inspiration to many later pantheists.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of information packed together there.
Yeah, go over it a few times and get a sense of.
It seemed like it said, I forget what they were saying in the beginning, but there were a few points that would break with. But I don't like to be in total agreement with anyone. Usually, I like to disagree with something. And I think this idea, like in society today, that if I don't agree with you, you can't be my friend. It's so absurd, but way beyond.
Yes, of course. That's if two people, or if more than two people are in a room and they all agree, somebody's lying. You know what I mean? Like you
You don't want to
agree
echo
on
chamber.
everything. Yeah, and it's not healthy. The only thing that I do is the good thing about me is I'm agnostic on everything. So I never really commit to one side or the other anyways, as it is. I just like to bring up the different scenarios, definitions, arguments, and just let them see how they work on their own, just whether it's an internal critique or an outsider test or something like that. It's like it's just, for me, it's part of life, is learning and trying to come to grips with how other people believe and feel and why they do.
Let's review the scientific method real quick, but not go over the details of it. You create a hypothesis, you test that, check the evidence, adjust the hypothesis to fit the evidence, test it again. That. Well, we all know how science and the scientific method it works, or hopefully people do. But suffice it to say that that I think the best scientists, and the view of the scientist as you begin a hypothesis, is to take the total agnostic stance to the hypothesis. You neither believe nor disbelieve the hypothesis.
That's right.
And furthermore, I think they've hijacked the term agnostic, whoever's defining it. I don't care if it was Huxley who coined the term, but the first definition, it's got the definition there. If you look it up, it's got a semicolon in there. And the first part of that, a semicolon can be replaced with a period. But so suffice it to say, again, they start out with an agnostic is someone who believes nothing is known or can be known of the nature of God. I don't believe that as an agnostic. I wouldn't make that claim. I don't see any agnostic that would make that kind of claim. That's a claim on God, and agnostics don't make claims about God.
Yeah,
so
that's like that's a positive claim.
Yeah, it's like, no, agnostic ain't gonna be saying believes nothing is known or can be known of God. We wouldn't know that. As an agnostic, be like, I don't know that. But the second definition is what I adhere to. And the second definition, is just has neither faith nor disbelief in God. That's essentially my stance. And it's been that way since age 9 when I left the Catholic faith. I think you might have had some issues with the Catholic faith yourself, but so that is a rigid dogma. The Catholic faith, you gotta go through confession to get the Eucharist and all this. Jesus didn't say, hey, you had to go to confession to receive the body of Christ. You didn't have to go to confession for that. Anyone's allowed. That's another reason I dislike the Catholic faith. But in all those hoops you have to jump through besides that, it's just, like you said, to believe that kind of thing takes so much mental gymnastics. It's absurd.
Exactly. It's the thing about, for me, with pantheism too, is it kind of opens up people's mind to what you'd say, like especially with theists, it gives them something that they can compare their God to versus naturalism. And you can still use the term God in the same context. So when you talk about God, say, well, why does God need all these extra properties that you're giving him? He's a man. He's living in a special place called heaven. He doesn't like homosexuality. All of these things that define all these different religions, those are added properties, where what my goal is to assume as little as possible, because the
Don't add anything.
more assumptions, you're going to be wrong. The more you guess and you assume if this is true, then this might be true, and if that's true, then this is just like you're building, just a castle of dreams. You know what I mean?
You feel like you don't have a foundation there. I think this is where we may diverge, because I like having opinions on things. I think I sat most of my life and listened to both theists and atheists, and I didn't think either one had a compelling argument. Now, that's
Uh-oh, you froze up. Oh, there you are.
yeah,
You're back.
long second. But so like I just like I heard the debate. Like I was in basic training in the Army, and they had one atheist guy, and then they had the Christian guy, and they were always debating. And I was like, I don't even think I knew what agnostic was at that time. I was agnostic, but wasn't aware of the term. I said, well, I don't really believe either one of you. So they were like, well, you're agnostic. I said, I neither have faith nor disbelief. I just don't know. And then now agnostic, I think so many atheists now think they're somehow agnostic if they say they're agnostic atheists. That's just not true either. You're not agnostic. You're just not 100% in your faith. Atheism is a faith.
I just don't care about all those labels anyways. Like, those labels for me just don't matter. It's for me, when you're talking to somebody, it's better to just know what is it that you do or don't believe and why. Like, that's my only conversation starter right there. Like, I don't care if you're an atheist, you're not, you're a mix or whatever you are. Because that's really where the meat of the conversation is at, rather than the identity part. The identity part is the construction part. That's the imagination part. That's where we all conceptualize our identities.
I got you, but the reason why I want to make the distinction there is because I think that's important. Because, see, if we're not clear on the terms and what they mean, science itself wouldn't operate if we didn't have terms to classify things and then define them. So to change a definition like that and say you're an agnostic atheist, but really you're talking like an agnostic, and all your actions are showing that you're an agnostic, you're undecided, well, then why are you saying you're an atheist? That's my question to them.
And see, I know the explanations that are given for stuff like that. Like, people will say, well, words don't have intrinsic meaning to them, right? Words have usages. You use them a certain way in a certain context. So a word like, atheist, for example, means one thing within the philosophical context. In philosophy, a philosophical atheist is one who says there is no God. That's what I believe, that there is no God.
Yeah, a disbelief in God. Now, what an atheist is through the years, because it wasn't always
But I'm just saying. So that was the definition. That's like the classical atheist definition. But then people start looking at the word. You say, well, let's look at the word in itself. You've got a and you've got theist. A means, negate, like it's not. And then theism,
Not
theos,
atheist.
God, no God. So theism is a belief, though. Theism is a belief that there is a God, some kind of God. It could be Jesus, um, Allah, Brahma, whatever, right? And so, what atheists nowadays in this kind of usage is more colloquial. So it's kind of like saying, I just don't believe in God because I don't know whether there's a God or not. I don't know either way. And since I don't know
Well,
either
then
way,
that would be, you're going back to an agnostic thing that
right?
I don't know. It's an
That's
agnostic. An
right. So
atheist
then,
claims knowledge because they claim a disbelief in God. So how could you say I disbelieve God, but at the same time I don't know? That's an oxymoron to me.
not
I don't
really.
agree.
Not if it's like, do you believe that there is a tea kettle floating around Pluto right now?
Of course not.
Right. You don't believe, do you know that? Do you know if there's a tea kettle floating around Pluto right now? Do you
No,
know
so
that?
I'd be 99.999% certain that it's not one.
Right. So you don't know completely, though. So you don't really know
No.
it. You just infer it for some reason that it can't be.
Yeah.
Suppose
As a matter of
suppose
fact,
could
yes,
it
we
be
know
like
there's no teapot
could it be that we're living in the
around Pluto.
Matrix? Could we be a brain in a vat living in the Matrix where these things actually happen? We don't know
Now
because we're a brain in a
that's
vat.
a possibility, but to me, that
That's all
kind
I'm
of
saying.
thing, what
But this
plausible
this
reality we know or that we could be brains in a vat. I think
but no no
that
no.
one
But
is
all I'm
more
Pat,
plausible than the other.
but Patrick, all I'm saying is that I'm just like you. That's all I'm saying is we're just alike. Because you don't know whether there's a tea kettle floating around Pluto, but you definitely don't believe there is. So that's how
Yeah.
people, when people think about Allah or Jesus or Yahweh, they think of it like that tea kettle floating around Pluto. Like they don't know whether it's not true, but they don't believe it because
But
they're
it's not really a correct analogy. Hold up just a second.
mhm. Words have usages. They do not have intrinsic meanings. That's the point. Like you can accept your own definitions and use words the way you want. It's your right. But if you want to understand someone, you're going to have to ask them what do they mean when they say they're an atheist or an agnostic. You can't pigeonhole people into what they're supposed to mean when they say things.
All right, give me just a sec. Excuse me,
Okay.
Scott.
Okay. So you can't pigeonhole people like that. You have to let people use words the way that that's why the definition doesn't have just one meaning. Even ironically, Patrick was saying that he doesn't go by the first definition of agnosticism, but the second.
My bad. My bad. But
Hey, so
they say that was one the way they wrote it in that definition. They say it's all goes together. That the first part of it goes with the second part. Even though there's a semicolon there, the argument I've been presented with by one atheist was that that's the definition, and then that's just it. You can't be any
no,
other kind of or
no.
something like that. I was
Well,
no.
so you can't, like I said before, words have usages. Remember, you said you didn't like the first usage of the word agnostic that was in the dictionary. You like the second one. It more seemed better to apply. It's the same thing with words like atheism. Some people don't want to follow one particular definition of atheism, and they'll much rather choose to define it this way. And then someone like you may come along and say, well, you're not really following what atheism means, because I can show you the entry where it means you this and that. And then they'll be like, but that's not the way I'm using the word. And you say, well, now you're just changing the definition of words because you're trying to get around from using certain words. And like, it's a word game. But it's like, I don't think it is. I think what it is words do not have intrinsic meanings. They're just tools. They're just
We assign them.
symbols.
We assign them
them.
meanings.
Yeah. And we have various different meanings for a word, you know. Like
Yeah.
my refrigerator is running. My note.
Like Clinton. He said it depends on what the meaning of is. Yeah, you look up is, there's so many different usages. I love that, Clinton. My bad, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But it was right. I mean, it depends on what, you know, and you can't pigeonhole people like that, because it'd be like you would say, well, I'm an agnostic, and then they think that it's that first meaning of agnostic that you didn't like, and now they're going to go ahead and lump you in on that, and you're going to say, but that's not what I am. I'm not that kind of agnostic. I'm this kind. And they're going to like, you can't just define words. You can't define your own words like that. You know, you have to.
I think they've misrepresented the agnostic, and that's the first definition. The second definition has neither faith nor disbelief. That's like an afterthought, right? Like the agnostics believe nothing is known or can be known of God because we're just idiots or whatever. And I'm like, no, we can figure stuff out. We might figure out what God is. You know, we might deduce God, and maybe that's what we're doing right here, Scott. You know.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And so being an agnostic can have a much deeper, richer, meaningful, you know, meaning of the word. I mean, that's the whole
They
point.
hijack the definition.
Anybody can. Yeah. And you can't, and no one can get on social media, and they do this all the time. Oh, that's not the meaning of the word. The word is this. And they try to box you into their straw man argument. You know, that's all it is. They're trying to make a straw man.
When I would look up definitions to build my vocabulary on my own, just when I was in grade school, I would write down every definition of the word. Now, my classmates would write down just one simple definition. They're not getting the full use of the word that way. That's why I understand English language now, and I'm a wordsmith, and I will go to bat against any writer out there. No, I'm just kidding. Stephen King, my bad. Sorry. But seriously, you know, it's just that I just, you know, we've got to be specific when we're talking about words. And I've never heard of an agnostic that would, a true agnostic, like a true Scotsman. That's a true fallacy. But no, I think some fallacies are wrong, because a true agnostic, they're not going to say, I believe nothing is known or can be known of the nature of God. You know, no, you're not going to say that as an agnostic. I'm saying it straight up. No agnostic is going to make that claim.
Yeah, I've rarely heard anybody say anything like that. You know, I know for me, when I say I'm agnostic, it means I don't know about certain things, and it's not necessarily every single thing. There's some things I do know. You know, the great things I know, but for most things, especially these big sort of questions that we're talking about, I don't really know. But knowing isn't really as important as, you know, the journey of experience, you know, to find the answer. You know, that's where the magic happens, is through that journey of trying to figure out what is the truth here, you know. And it may or may not be attainable, but it's just fun to go down that path and journey that way, you know. But anyways, man, I don't want to hold you up. It's been over an hour, you know, and I know it's getting late. I gotta get ready to do a few things myself, man. But I appreciate you coming on and having a conversation. I think next week I'm going to try to speak to somebody else from the group. You'll be surprised.
I got you. Yeah, all right. Well, yeah, I look forward to tuning in, and much success on your show here. Like I say, I appreciate it. And, you know,
Yes,
if we ever disagree, you know, it's fine. It's fine as long
man.
as we disagree. That's cool
Hey,
by me.
it's all about respect, you know. Nothing wrong with that. I mean,
I get passionate about this stuff, but
yeah.
you know, not everyone's like that. You know, everybody has their own take. You're cool, calm, collected, like that. You know, everybody has their own thing.
Their own person. That's right. That's who we are, man. And it makes for an interesting conversation, man. I thank you for coming on through, man, and having it with me so we could kind of hash it out, man, and talk about pantheism and different things. So anyways, my man, I'm going to catch up with you, sir. And you guys have a great night. Peace.